All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Welcome to GRREC. I just have a few logistical announcements to make. First of all, exit out this door. I think the nearest exit is on this side of the building. If you will notice on your table, we have these little cards. If throughout the meeting you have a question, just fill out this card, and we have some folks in the back who are going to walk around and they'll be reading these questions back for us. Okay. You also will find on your table some QR codes. Throughout the meeting, we'll reference some of these QR codes, and you can click on them. You can take these with you and look at this information later if you like. And there's also some information about if you want to stay involved or get more involved. The bottom QR code will help you do that. And I think that's all I need to say. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to the Commissioner of Education, Robbie Fletcher.
There's some range where I can stand because
They'll go past the black line and the tables.
and you'll notice I face a lot. So first of all, let me apologize for being late. The commissioner is very long-winded, so that I do have a 10-minute frame here. But when I was talking to superintendents, we got kind of excited. So really had a great time talking to their superintendents about the model. Get some input. There was also some legislators there. So do we have any legislators in the room before we start? Any legislators? If not, I would like to thank Representative Jackson, who was in our meeting prior to, and also Representative Scott Lewis. Both were in our meeting prior to this, the superintendents asking questions and having input. And so we've been involved with legislators as we got to this point. But first and foremost, my name is Robbie Fletcher, and that echo is a little different. But anyway, my name is Robbie Fletcher. I am the Commissioner of Education, and believe it or not, this is 7 months in. So who's keeping my 10-minute timer? Have you started yet? You already got 5 of them. No. But the most beautiful thing that I get to do as commissioner is to visit so many school districts. I spent 2 nights in with Coy Salmons at Murray State, Murray Independent, stayed at his house, stayed there a couple of nights and visited 4 or 5 districts. I've been in Bowling Green several times. I've been in Logan County. I think I'm up to around 30 some districts and around 50 some schools so far at this point, hoping to have more in the very near future if this daggone weather change. But our point for tonight is not to talk about the commissioner. Our point tonight is to talk about an accountability system, if launched, when launched, that will be both meaningful and useful for all Kentucky learners. So you're going to see this slide several times. And one of the things that we really truly believe at the Kentucky Department of Education, the commissioner, the Kentucky United We Learn Council, and so many people, and let me also tell you, to get to this point in the accountability model that we're presenting tonight, there's been thousands of people who contributed. We've had districts to work on this level. We've had surveys. We've had a lot of different things to get to this point. And in order to have that an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to all learners, we're going to talk to you tonight about a piece that has to be there, and that's local accountability. You know, we're very astute, if you will, about what accountability looks like in a uniform system across the state. We understand what the math test looks like, the reading test. We understand what science, social studies, and all those other tests that we give and how it has to be uniform as we move through. But in order to have a local accountability model that's meaningful and useful to all learners, there has to be a local accountability piece. And a part of that, in the decision making that we've gone through so far, there's 3 main ideas. All right, first one, vibrant learning. And you look at a local accountability model and other things that we're looking at, you're going to be presented with today. We have a district that's presented vibrant learning today. We understand there's a lot of great vibrant learning opportunities, whether that be capstone projects, whether that be defenses of learning, whether that be apprenticeships, internships. That's happening across our state, but our goal is how do we expand that? How do we get more and more students to have those type of opportunities, that type of vibrant learning? To give you a very quick example of vibrant learning, probably 8, maybe 9 years ago, and again, I'm from Eastern Kentucky, if you can't tell by the way I talk already, there was a project called the Tiny House Project. When you did a tiny house project, this was something that was that a school system, high school would get together and their engineering class would design the tiny house. It would be on a double axle type pull behind. Their carpentry class would build it. Their electricity class would wire it. Their art class would paint it. Their business class would build the budget. Then also too, they would go out and bid these tiny house projects. As a matter of fact, there was one tiny house that was bidded on in Pikeville. That was someone from California bid on this tiny house, got the money, and then brought his old truck and took it all the way back across the country and gave the students pictures as it went through. The final picture that it's on a beach on the Pacific Ocean. Do you know what that vibrant learning is about? It's about relevance. That was relevant to those students. I can tell you hundreds of kids that just started showing up just because of that vibrant learning opportunity. So how many vibrant learning opportunities that may not be to that extent that's going on in your district, but that's the reason why the kids are coming to school, because that is relevant learning that's going on. The other ideas is accelerated innovation, especially in accountability. You know, we have different districts that use different measures for their local accountability models. You know, I've used Logan County several times. They have 4 pillars of success. Without going into a whole lot of detail, their 4th pillar deals with student well-being. What percent of their kids are involved in extracurricular and co-curricular activities? That's part of their local accountability model, because that's what their community wanted to hear about. But also, too, if you look at research, the more involved students are in the high school setting, the greater the opportunity for success once they leave our high schools. You're not going to get that in a paper pencil test. But you know what? That's what their community is involved in. There's so many other things. Profiles of a learner. How many districts across our state have a great profile of a learner for their defenses of learning and it's part of their local accountability? We want that to spread. We want that to be a part of accountability. And then most important, well, not most importantly, but just as important, collaboration with your community. What do you as a community member expect from me as your superintendent of your district, of our teachers? What do you expect from a student when they get a diploma that says, I'll use Lawrence County High School? What exactly does that mean? We want our accountability systems to be developed locally so that you know exactly what that means going forward. But also, too, how do we incorporate collaboration across the state? Some districts have better, have different resources, as maybe a Lawrence County versus a Jefferson County, or even as we go through, or Warren County versus an independent district of, let's say, Paintsville. Okay, I'm gonna have to wrap up a little bit. Thank you. See, there's a reason why the superintendent has the commissioner has a 10-minute window. And I'll wrap this up pretty quickly. But if you look at collaboration, how do we make sure that we have collaboration across our state, but also within our communities? Now, very quickly, and I'll do this in 2 minutes. We've come a long way. This began in 2021 with the listening tour, the Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education. We went into the Kentucky United Learn. There was more of an accountability focus that happened in 22 and 23. We've gone through 4 prototypes where we've put out one prototype, got input, changed it, and come up with a second prototype, a third prototype, a fourth prototype. As a matter of fact, we're on our second model framework. We did a model framework 1.0 that had a part that our local superintendent's advisory council, or Kentucky United Learn Council, and also our Kentucky Board of Education wanted changed, and we changed it because we're listening. That's the point of these town halls. What do you see that you think could make this better? What kind of input do you have? So again, in 2024, we're up to our second model framework. And I promise you, there's probably going to be a 3.0 because we've already gotten some input from superintendents and from these town halls that we've made. We're listening. 2025 town halls, model framework that we'd like to get finished. And then 2026, recommend this to the General Assembly. Also understand too, there's a long on-ramp for this. All right. I think this is my last slide before the agenda. If you look at it, I want you to think about our accountability model in 2 parts. There is a federal and state portion. There are federal and state requirements that we have to fulfill. Math and reading assessment. And also too, to talk about some of the ways that we're listening. Right now, the accountability model has changed within it. 92% of the people we surveyed very early on said that they wanted to get rid of change and move into student growth. And to let you know what the difference there is, change would be comparing your third, fourth, and fifth grade this year in reading to last year's third, and fourth, fifth grade, as opposed to where did you get the individual student and where did you take that individual student? So the growth part would be a part of that federal state system, but also a part of the federal state system. It has to be uniform because we have to name and we want to identify those schools that need help, the CSI, TSI, ATSI systems. So there has to be a federal piece that is uniform that we name those students, but also too, we want to be able to do timely instruction of that. From the local part, we want to allow as much flexibility as possible. What's important to you, but also customize to meet your community needs, and then add to it, collaborate with multiple groups. So that being said, think of the accountability model in two parts, the federal piece and the local piece. What does that local piece look like for you? Whether you're in Bowling Green, whether you're in Logan County, or whether you're in Owen County, it should look different in different parts of the state. So for today, there's a welcome introduction from the commissioner, and then we're going to have a district that talks about what vibrant learning is for us. I believe we have Hardin County for today. So thank you so much to Hardin County. We've also had over Floyd County in Eastern Kentucky at Quebec that did this for us, and Woodford County in Central Kentucky that's done this for us so far. Then we'll get a little bit more about what is local accountability, again, one district story, and then we'll talk about that. And then the model framework, vibrant learning will come from us. We'll talk about that. And then the local accountability is from Hardin County. The model framework 2.0, more details, and then we'll have a question and answer session after. Okay. What's that?
I'm turning it over to Callie.
Yeah.
My name is Callie Colley, and I'm a regional innovation specialist with KDE. And you're right, that echo is really different. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about vibrant learning tonight. But before I get started, we want to just kind of get your minds thinking about kids that you care about. So really quick, I want you to pull out your phone or wallet or wherever you have a picture and pull up a picture of a kid that you really care about. So let everybody do that for just a second. Just pull out your phone. It can be your own kids, grandchild, niece, nephew, somebody that's important to you. While you're looking at that kid, I want you to think about what you hope for them. If you could curate or craft their education from scratch, what would it be like? What do you hope for in their experiences? What are some of the things that you wish that they could do while they're in school? What do you want them to know, to be able to do and be like when they leave us? Those are all things that I want you to really keep in mind as we go throughout this presentation, really personalizing it and thinking about your own kids and your own people in your life that you care about. Okay, before we get into a definition of vibrant learning, I am going to walk you through some examples of vibrant learning in contrast to traditional teaching and learning practices. Just a disclaimer before we do that, I want to make sure that it's clear that you know that traditional versus vibrant is not good versus bad or wrong versus right. It's just really looking at vibrant learning in contrast to what we're used to and what versus what it could be. So in this first example, students are learning about pollinators. And in a traditional setting, students might learn about pollinators and take notes and do a worksheet about dangers that pollinators potentially might face. They might draw a diagram of a pollinator and label its parts. And then at the end, they might take an assessment and a multiple choice quiz about all they've learned about pollinators. In the vibrant learning example, this is an actual example of a project that students in the Commonwealth have completed. That's actually better. People can hear that. Can you hear me without the mic? We're gonna try that.
No, we need it for the video.
Oh, the video. Okay, sorry.
You're fine.
Okay. That's just okay. In this example, students researched pollinators. They answered a driving question that was, how can we inspire others to support and protect pollinators? That was the question. And in this project, they researched pollinators themselves. They worked in collaborative teams to design a pollinator garden. They worked with community members and utilized resources and expertise from the community to create these visual aids and present to others. And they made seed packets and bracelets to share with others to inspire this idea of protecting these pollinators. Another example, in this example, students were learning about the body systems, human body systems. In the traditional classroom, they were reading textbooks about the human body systems, taking notes, key terms, completing worksheets and diagrams, labeling the parts, and learning about how the different body systems interacted with one another. And at the end, they wrote a report over the body system of their choice. In this real example from Kentucky, students were taking on the role of medical investigators, and they answered the question. They were actually taking on a case of a real middle school student who was sick, and their driving question was, what is going on in McKenna's body that's making her feel this way? So that was their driving question. And just think about the relevance that holds of having to think about a middle school student their age that's sick. How can we solve this problem? And how can we come up with a diagnosis? And so they worked together in these medical teams, and they curated evidence to come up with a diagnosis. And after they did that, they presented their findings to a panel of medical professionals in their community. In this last example, most of us in this room probably read To Kill a Mockingbird and have had to answer the question, is Atticus a hero or not? And use evidence from the text to support that stance. In the Vibrant example, students read the same book and had to come up with an answer to the question, what is a hero? What makes a person a hero? And they look at that question and explored that question through the lens of history. And with groups, they read a curation of texts, both from teachers and other students, and analyzed those texts to be able to put together a video for their school's activism week. And in that video, they answered their question about what makes a hero. And they also provided some examples of ways that students could take action against injustice in their own communities. So with those examples, what do you notice about the difference between those traditional examples versus the vibrancy of the projects that we're seeing happen all around the state? And which one of those examples in each of those would you want for the kid in the picture that you pulled up at the beginning of this session? Vibrant learning experiences, as defined by the Kentucky United We Learn Council, is learning that matters to students. So it brings back that relevance that the commissioner was talking about, that application. And I'm sure that as you were thinking about things that you hope for the kid in your life, some of these things popped up: the relevance, the authentic learning, the joy, the fun of learning, really honoring their culture and their gifts and their interests and making things personal. This just hearing from a student in the state. This is a student from Spencer County Middle School. They were doing a project where they had to create and design their own dream home. So they got to draw, this is in math class, they got to draw a scale drawing of their dream home. And they built a model of that. And they were able to present, again, they worked with community members. They drew up a scale model and built that and were able to present it. Some of the things in this quote: being able to build something, being able to experiment, being creative. But also, one of the big things that stood out to me in this quote was the connection between when she said, I've always loved math, but I didn't understand how building a house would become math. So really bridging that gap between school and things that they might do in their real life. So bridging that, making that authenticity, and seeing that relevance, it really makes those light bulbs come on for students. So while Kentucky districts are enhancing learning through vibrant learning, they're also preparing students for success outside of K-12 school. So beyond like when they leave us. And a lot of districts are doing that through Kentucky's Portrait of a Learner. So we have, as a state, a Portrait of a Learner, which a Portrait of a Learner is just an agreed upon set of competencies that answer the question, what do we want students to know, be able to do, and be like when they leave us? So it's skills, it's honoring the knowledge, skills, and competencies that we want students to be able to know and show us. It also combines that academic knowledge with their personal traits and skills. And Kentucky has our own Portrait of a Learner. But one thing that I love is that we didn't just say, this is the Portrait of a Learner, everybody's using it. Because we understand that every community and every district is unique in what they value. And so 140 plus districts have developed or are currently developing a Portrait of a Learner that is unique to their own district and their own community. And a lot of those districts are also working towards performance assessments based on those competencies so that they can really see what students are getting. And students can show off those competencies through these experiences and exhibitions. And so the Portrait of a Learner is a huge part of this pathway and this work. And we just remembering and pointing back to the moonshot. The moonshot is the goal of this is to create an assessment and accountability system that is meaningful to all students, to all learners, and the communities that they're a part of. And so that's what we keep pointing back to, is really creating something that's meaningful to everyone. And with that, that brings us to local accountability. So tying all of that together, those experiences and those competencies that we've created, that as a community, we say, this is what matters, this is what's important to us. This is a great quote from Brian Friesman. He's a superintendent of Fleming County Schools. They have come a long way in their local accountability system, but some of the highlights, local accountability is a system designed by the people for the people it serves. It's transformative, it reshapes the learning process, and it allows all stakeholders in a community to provide input on what matters to them and also have a say on what is reported out. So community members say, this is what we want to see. This is what we care about when you tell us how your school is going. And it allows the school system to really tell a story, because we know that sometimes numbers and colors don't always tell the whole story of a district. And with that, I'm going to introduce, I'm really happy that they're here and going to share with us Greg Sutton and Brandy New with Hardin County Schools. They're going to share about their district's local accountability system. Yeah.
No, there's one right here.
Unless you'd rather have a
Perfect.
turn, flip it up.
I can honestly say whether you're from a small district or a large district, I feel like that school districts are the heartbeat of the communities they serve. And grew up in a smaller district here in Kentucky in Meade County. I've been working in Hardin County for 29 years. And each of those situations, the school districts were the heartbeats of those communities. So whether you're a teacher here tonight, whether you're a community member, whether you're an administrator, business leader, you play a role in the success of your districts. And I appreciate that a lot. So thank you all for coming out tonight to hear us speak. In Hardin County Schools, we have about 14,000 students, about 14,500 with preschool. We have over 2,100 classified and certified staff members, and we're hoping to grow. We have a lot of opportunities for advanced manufacturing, a lot of industry with Alltech, Matulsa, Ford, Blue Oval plant coming in. You think about us being a military community with Fort Knox, the Human Resource Command. So we feel like we're a growing community. We feel like we have a lot to offer, which I actually offers opportunities for our teachers to connect with those business and industry, and just an opportunity for our students to learn from those and have a place to come back and work. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah, and I'm Brandy, and not to brag further, but we do feel like that we have a lot to offer in our community, and we also feel like we have a strong public school system to support that. We feel like we have great, foundations in numeracy and literacy in our district. We have over 40 career pathways that we offer in high school where kids can get certifications and internships. We worked really hard. Our teachers in our schools have in 6 through 12 in the past 3 or 4 years with project and problem-based learning, which is a huge learning curve and really trying to push those vibrant learning experiences and offer those things. And we have a community that supports us. They show up to career fairs. Parents, not everybody all the time, but for the most part, we feel like we have a community that really backs us. They're showing up to work with our kids in schools to give feedback on projects. They're showing up to one-on-one scheduling. We have all the support that is coming in from the community and from the 2,000 people that work there. And then at the end of the year or end of the day, the only thing they get communicated back to them is sometimes a test score. And that doesn't tell the whole story of our kids. It doesn't explain what every kid can do. It doesn't honor that or respect it. And I don't think that it always necessarily, if it's about one measure, it doesn't honor and respect what all the adults in our system are doing too for our kids. And that's, every teacher, instructional assistant, librarian, bus driver, anybody who works directly with kids, but also, our community members that are supporting these kids that are part of the development of this child as well, right? So trying to find a way to celebrate that and to come up with a more robust way of looking at our kiddos is kind of what we've been looking at for the past 1.5 years, 2 years now.
How do we prepare our students for jobs that exist right now, that won't exist in 5 years, and that will exist 30 years from now? And those are things that we have to think about. How do we prepare our students for that? And I think that we kind of realize that things are changing, things are evolving. We have to have a way to look at our stakeholders, our community members, and say, let's provide some clarity for you as students, as parents, as community business leaders, to say, we're going to have this portrait of a learner. That's what you're telling us we're going to need for our community for future jobs. And we always say this, there's 3 things we want from our kids, the same things you want for your kids. When they walk out of that last day of high school, when they walk across that line, they're thinking 1 of 3 things. They're going to be enrolled in a 2 or 4 year college or a technical program. They're going to be enlisted in the military, or they're going to be, what was the last thing there? Employed. Employed. When we say that, we'll say employed in a living wage, job. And that's a challenge that we're looking at today. So it's the same thing, employed, enrolled, or enlisted. So, yeah. So let's talk about our next slide here. I feel like we've been a forward-thinking district for many years. Under the direction of Nanette Johnson, our former superintendent back in 2012, she actually collaborated with our Chamber of Commerce to come up with the work ethic certification. That was kind of cutting edge back in 2012. We came up with the grade 8. We had ways for our seniors to go through a kind of like an interview process that earned work ethic certification. They had a seal on their diploma. They got opportunities to have interviews with local business leaders for summer jobs. And we thought that was very cutting edge, and it was at the time. But we've kind of realized that as things change, we need to evolve as well as a district. So we thought, how can we look at our portrait of a learner to say, what can this look like moving forward? So we came back and got with our 100 or so community members, and we tried to reevaluate what the work ethic certification looked like. And that's evolved now into our portrait of a learner.
Yeah, so like Greg said, we already kind of had something in place that was put together with the Chamber of Commerce 15 years ago-ish. As we came back together this time, and we worked a lot with UK Next Gen, who and everyone else, but who has been working with districts all across the state. So they brought in this different, knowledge that these other folks have and their experiences, and we did some community mapping. The Chamber of Commerce is not a true representation of everyone in our community. So we very intentionally put together this guest list of 100, and I can't remember how many people. I think we had about 100 show up. I have lived in Hardin County for almost all of my 46 years on the planet, and I feel like I'm of the community. Between myself and my children, we've either gone to or taught at about half of our 23 schools, and so feel like I know our folks. It is the only time in my life that I've ever got to stand in a room that was so representative of our community. We had clergy members. We had staff from every single school, staff that, band directors. It didn't matter. Every kind of teacher and everything in between, speech language paths. We had the industrial foundation. We had representation from ECTC and Fort Knox, but we had ESL parents. So just a very diverse spectrum of folks who came together, gave up 2 or 3 nights last fall. It's been well over a year now, and sat down and helped us to decide what are the skills and dispositions. What are those things we want our kids to be able to do whenever they walk out the doors, not just in 12th grade when they leave us, but on a Tuesday, if you're a 4th grader, what'd you learn today? We all know, the reading, the writing, the math, the science, the social studies, but what else are they getting out of the day? What are we putting our efforts into? So they gave us this big list of things. We came back as a district and a smaller team, sorted through all that information with the help of UK Next Gen again, and their experiences from other, places all over the state. And we said, okay, these are the 5 things that are competencies that we value, and then we have indicators for each of these. It was more specific and also goes every grade, every day, and includes more of the teachers in the process as far as what our portrait looks like versus what we had with work ethic. We took that back to the community. We bounced back and forth 2 or 3 times last year, and we now have this lovely, beautiful, I get a little teary-eyed when I see it. It's so pretty. Our portrait of a learner that we rolled out to staff this year.
How do we celebrate that? We started off last year with our opening day. We had all 2,000 staff members at Central Hardin High School, and every school got to nominate one teacher to represent their school as a difference maker, and it had to connect to the portrait of a learner, one of our 5 competencies. We were able to recognize those 23 people from our 23 facilities. They're on opening day, and since then, every board meeting, we actually do a difference maker award for a student, a staff, or a community member at every board meeting that represents one of those 5 competencies. So that's been a big way for us to celebrate the work that we're doing and still reach out to our community for what they're giving back to us in our project-based learning and getting into our schools and being a part of the work that we're doing.
So this year is kind of a pilot year for us as far as when we're talking about accountability with portrait and, also that daily instruction from where's this fitting inside our systems. We have a point of contact at each of our 23 schools. We also have at least one teacher at each school who is like, hey, I'm going to try this year. I'm going to, in my classroom, figure out how this fits with my social studies statement. Or I'm going to, in my classroom, decide, where's this fit in PBIS, public, or our behavioral system. Thank you. Right now, I just can't remember what it is. Thanks. Big group. So, where does all this fit? Right? Where is it that the pieces and parts are making sense for a band director? Where is it that all the pieces and parts are making? And we're keeping logs of that. And they're also saying, it'd be really great if I had X. And I'm like, okay. And so we go back and we get to make it so that when we show this to everyone next year, we will have done this whole process again. We've got a small group of teachers that we're working with that's helping us figure out, I've been working really hard to make projects in my middle school science classroom for the past couple of years. What are the pieces and parts that the kids get out of that on top of the science content? Because they definitely are. So that's been really fun for me personally this year. Probably one of the most joyous things I've ever got to do in education. We're in, January now. I've been making monthly visits to these schools, and a lot of my schools are like, hey, so-and-so wants to join the pilot. Yes, please. Hey, the whole 5th grade team wants in. Okay. Hey, our counselor took this over. I'm like, I don't even know her name. She's new this year. So people are coming in. It's reinvigorating the educators, I feel like, in our classrooms, because this is the stuff that's really fun. We all love our content, but we also love our kids. And this is what it feels like to us. We've also been bouncing back and forth with teacher groups who are helping us to figure out what does that defense of learning look like for us. We have traditionally done a work ethic interview at 5th, 8th, and 12th grade with those little work ethic standards. But that was an adult, usually a community member, sitting across from a kid and doing like a mock job interview. So kids got practice with that. So we're going to transition that over the next few years to something that's more student-centered. So it'd be a kid getting to stand up and say, this is how I've shown that I'm an effective communicator. Or this is, my yes, still my academic test scores and the goals that I set for myself in math and reading. And this is how I showed that I'm an engaged learner and met these goals. So going back and forth also with the community this year, inviting that same group back to our defenses that we're going to get to try out at the end of the year this year, because with the district that has 23 schools, just, free traditional high schools, trying to get everybody to figure out what works for them and what we can agree on, and then where we can allow some autonomy for our schools, even kind of like your district to district. And so we get to test all that out this year and then roll it out going forward. We've got 5 minutes. Do you want to hit some of our vibrant learning?
Rock and roll. We have an hour-long presentation. 15 minutes were enough. So I'm elementary school. We've really tried to work really hard to unify our district, and it's hard when you have 14,000 students, 23 facilities, 13 elementary schools. How to get everybody on the same page, and how does that connect to our portrait? And something, Dr. Neithoff really, encouraged me as one of my mentors. He said, "You've got to keep the academic focus." He said, "Don't ever lose that." And that always stays in the back of my mind every time we're going about this work. And so we really worked hard to get our foundational skills going with Orton Gillingham. Some school districts use letters. We worked hard to get and amplify reading across the district for K2, 3 through 5, ready classroom math, to focus on math discourse, to get students talking about their learning. Getting illustrative math and expeditionary learning in the middle schools, and start talking about those common assessments again. Some of the things we lost, back in the pandemic, we're still trying to get some of those things back. So that's coming around. Project-based learning, our collaboration with the New Tech Network has been outstanding, and some of the work that we're doing with them. Some people ask me all the time, what are some of the best content areas you have that are really doing a great job with project-based learning? I go straight to social studies. Some of the community involvement we've had with our social studies department in middle school and high schools with civic leaders, with the mayor, with state legislators, and coming and talking about how to make laws with the Hardin County History Museum, the Fraser Museum. We have a lot of great learning opportunities for students that are very vibrant and greatly appreciated. Right now, with our residential maintenance program, HVAC, plumbing, electric, heavy equipment, we have 30 seniors in co-op opportunities right now. So we always talk about jobs. We're always talking about, well, how do we do something different to get to a job? Well, we're putting them in work opportunities as seniors, and we're increasing our co-op or internship opportunities. And that's vibrant. That's part of the portrait of a learn. That's part of student agency. That's part of being a collaborator. A lot of these students are actually establishing these co-op opportunities themselves. They have connections in our community. When we talk about that advanced manufacturing, those opportunities, we have students who know how to take advantage of that. So very, very proud of where we're headed, and we're just getting started. We've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so we are in year 1 of 4 as far as the work specific to our portrait of a learner is. This is our, and every year we kind of have outlined our goals for assessment, evidence, instruction, professional learning, and community communication. And this year is our explore and celebrate. Instead of working with the pilot teachers to really explore, what does this look like in the daily grind of a classroom? And, how do we hold ourselves accountable back to the community? And then celebrating, like we said, with some of our ACS Difference Maker Awards. I think it said a lot that the district changed their awards and went in first. And we've been continuing in all ways to celebrate those vibrant learning experiences too, with our social media and our weekly shout outs from the superintendent. Next year, educate and enact. So that's what we're going to be doing, the bulk of the professional development work that we're going to be doing, and also giving teachers the time to figure out how does this make sense and where do I fit in this, hoping that then every teacher, not just some, see their place in this work. And I'm not saying in all 5 competencies every day, but hopefully everybody will find a way to connect and give them some time and space to do that this summer and throughout the year next year. Year after, that's where we'll be full on. We're doing the thing. We may change the thing a lot as we learn, but we're going to be doing it and holding ourselves accountable to that. And then also looking at that accountability as far as like giving kids the honor and respect of being a whole student, not a test score. And then put 20, 27, 28, refine and elevate, although I feel like that's a cycle going on infinitely in education, but that's where we plan to take it next. So I'm going to let Greg wrap up.
I see Susan here tonight. Susan, she's been a great resource for our district as well. She guided us through the process of the portrait of the learner. And I would encourage you to do this if you have not. I feel like we're behind. I'm sure all of you are saying, I can't believe we're listening to this guy because we already have it done. We're already doing it. It's going to be 4 years for us, but it's going to be good work. And it's going to make a lot of difference with students. And once again, I appreciate what you're all doing. I always have to say this because I'm proud of my dad. He put 41 years in this business. 41. 19 years as a classroom teacher and 22 as an elementary principal. We got a lot of great work to do. Let's do it together. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to start out by asking you, what will the world look like in 50 years? We just had a new year, it's 2025. So 2075, do you have any idea of what the world will look like by that time? He's shaking his head no. Can you even imagine what the world will look like in 4 years? It's going to change a lot. It's going to change a lot. But yet that's what we are preparing our students for today. Remember the picture that you brought out of your loved one. How old will that person be in 50 years? The one I brought out was my son. He will be retired, retirement age at that point. But yet we're educating him now and your loved one now for what will be in 50 years or in 4 years. So we have to look at the opportunities that we give our students now and give them the skills, knowledge, and dispositions to be prepared for that new world. We have the ability to provide those on with that and make those that it grow and build a prosperous Kentucky by launching these. Now we're talking about two systems. We're talking about assessment system and we're talking about accountability system. There's two different things. Those are two different things. The assessment system, when you think about the assessment system, think about those tests. Think about the tests that we take, the reading test, the math test, science, social studies, ACT. That's the assessment system. The accountability system is the system that indicates school performance. So there's the indicators. The indicators of graduation rate, post-secondary or transition readiness. Those are indicators that reflect the performance of the students in that school. Assessment accountability. Two different things, but related. So when we talk about these local accountability system, it's those pieces that are determined by the local community, that the local community wants to hold themselves accountable for and their schools accountable for. Two distinct systems, federal accountability and state accountability. We're talking about collaboration with communities. Brandy mentioned that she had been in this local Hardin County for many years, and her children have been in half of the schools, right? So who better to be part of that decision making about what local accountability is than the people that live there, that know the resources, that know the community, that knows what that community needs. Who better than somebody that's been there, lived there, grew up there, or moved in and is part of that local community? So collaboration with communities around this local accountability system that's different and unique for each and every single district. One district may focus on advanced automotive and through certificates or through dual credit. Another community could focus on social emotional learning. Another community could look at the number of students that are part of co-curricular or other activities outside the classroom, because it's important that students are involved both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So this local collaboration with communities is an important piece so that each and every district can decide what's important to the local community. And that's what they want to be held accountable for. So that collaboration, that engagement piece is important. And developing networks of schools or districts that they work together to learn from each other. So that if there's a district that has similar demographics, economics, similar resources, maybe in the western part of the state, northern part of the state, or the eastern part of the state, they can work together and collaborate, building each other up and supporting each other when it comes to advancement of our education system. So we're talking about assessment accountability, but we're impacting the educational system.
Dr. Stanford, we've had, I think this is our third town hall. And one of my favorite slides, outside of the ones that have pictures of students, those are actually best. But one of my favorite slides came from Woodford County. And Woodford County had a slide of all the districts that were collaborating together to help them in developing a local accountability model. They were having meetings with Clark County. They were having meetings with Broward County. They were meeting with Johnson County. They were meeting with a lot of districts that had a very similar makeup to them to say, these are the things that maybe you'll see in Broward County that can we borrow that idea in Woodford County? Or maybe we've got an idea in Woodford County that can be used in Shelby County. Shelby County is another group. There were so many different districts that were collaborating, and it wasn't something that KD said you had to do. This is something that they felt like they could learn from each other. So when you hear us talk about the accountability system, you're not going to hear red, orange, yellow, blue, or green. What we're trying to promote is collaboration among districts. You know, of course, there's a federal accountability piece. Dr. Stafford will get into that. And we need that in order to identify districts that need help in math, reading, and other areas. We need to help them. We want to provide those supports. And Dr. Kelly Foster and the OCIS group, they do a great job of supporting districts. But also, too, we want to give that flexibility to grow, and also, too, how can we learn from each other? So, if I was a superintendent right now, probably the first thing I'd do tomorrow, I'd call her and say, okay, I can go work in. Because I hope you saw the enthusiasm. I hope you saw the love that they have for what they're doing right now. How can I bring that to Lawrence County, which is where I was born? So again, when you have that opportunity to collaborate, we're trying to remove that system of rank and file to more about lifting each other up. And to see districts collaborate is powerful. Matter of fact, GRREC, James Tomahawk, is working with James. You don't mind how many districts you're working through?
But 4 in the core group, and then some others on the outside.
Okay, so we have 4 districts here in GRREC, and it's some on the out on the periphery, say outside out. that are working together to develop their own local accountability system. We don't expect those four districts to have the same accountability system, and we don't want them to because that's important to the local community. But to have that collaboration, working out together, how much better is that than just having to develop this from the ground up? So again, that local accountability model, that collaboration is so key to a part of this work because there's not KDE can't survive supports. We're going to rely on our co-ops. We're going to rely on UK Michigan. We're going to rely on somebody in districts working with each other. We want to provide supports too, but also how do we make that collaboration piece so that everyone's working together across the Commonwealth to better the experience for all students?
And part of that is working with our local communities. And they could also look at the arts and including the arts in their local accountability system. So that if it's important to that local community to have performances or fairs and a robust arts program, they can determine, again, locally, what that looks like for their communities within and make that determination. Okay, so two distinct systems, a federal system and a local system. Looking at the top right is the federal system. Looking specifically at the requirements that are currently in the Every Student Succeeds Act that was passed by the U.S. Department of Education and the legislators back in 2015. Focus on reading and math. That reading and math assessment that it comes at the end of the school year at the summative. So looking at grades 3 through 8 and 10 at the high school level. Then we heard throughout the development of our different prototypes and frameworks in the Kentucky United Art Council, we had very strong support for individual student growth. Right now, we have something called change in the system, which is the difference in indicators from one year to the next within the schools, focusing more on students in this system with individual student growth in reading and math, how the students do in reading and math from one year to the next. So right now we test every single year, 3 through 8 in reading and math. So it would be individual student growth, how that student did in grade 3 to grade 4 and the growth that we want to see from all of our students in our content areas. Transition readiness is that reflection of the students and their preparedness to move on beyond high school, whether that's career or whether that's college. So really no changes to that, nor the graduation rate. Graduation rate currently includes both the 4-year and that really important 5th-year graduation rate that reflects the good work and hard work and that persistence to graduation that those students, their parents, and their teachers, they work toward that graduation rate. English language progress, no changes to that indicator. That is our indicator of our students that is demonstrating their acquisition of the English language, the English language learner. The Climate and Safety Survey, it fulfills another requirement from the U.S. Department of Education. That is a survey given to all students that are in tested grades that reflects their student voice and how they feel toward their school, as particular as it relates to climate and safety. Now, those first 5 bullets are about the accountability piece. So those streamline, and what we've heard loud and clear is that we want to streamline the federal pieces down to almost the bare minimum. So that's taking steps toward that. That last bullet there is an assessment. So looking at science assessments that must be uniform across the Commonwealth. So it's not an accountability. It's not the science assessment is not required to be an accountability, but it's required to be assessed and reported. So a common assessment given to all students, grades for science, but notice it's not used in the accountability. So it's a uniform test across the Commonwealth, not used in accountability, but could be included in your local accountability if that's a local priority.
To add to that, again, like that, now, we must give a standard science assessment and we must report the results of that assessment. It does not have to be a part of that numbering and percentage system where we're naming CSI, TSI, HTSI. So again, those measures that you see at the top, reading and math, individual student growth, transition ratings, graduation rate, English language progress, climate survey, there's a formula that we look at, put those together to identify CSI, TSI, HTSI, because that is federal requirements. The other federal requirement, just like you said, is an assessment that we need to give at science. Let's face it, we have some work to do in science, not only from the standard standpoint, but also from our assessment standpoint. So that allows us to pull out that science assessment and work on it individually and focus on that without it being a part of a ranking system. So again, at this point, we feel like the science should be pulled out and not part of that CSI, TSI, HTSI destination. As a matter of fact, our results of our surveys point out that, just like Dr. Stafford said, they want to streamline that CSI or that federal part that would label CSI, TSI. So again, there will be a number, if you will, we have a formula now that puts together different indicators for a score. And then that score will be used to label and identify those districts or those schools that need more help. And again, we're not trying to put the scarlet letter on anybody, but we realize that there's some schools need more support, and we still have to have that as federally required. Science does not have to be a part of the league.
So let's shift now to the local accountability. Let's shift there. So there are some required pieces and then some local measures. Let's start at the top left with the choice measures. The choice measures that are required to be in your accountability, but there's some choices on how the district would then include them in accountability. So let's start with the requirement of social studies and writing to be part of your local accountability system. So for each of these, we feel that it is important to continue to test and teach and to test social studies and writing. So what the framework currently has is that in social studies and writing, there would be assessments every grade 3 through 10. Now, the choice would be how you test them. Would you use a state developed assessment, or would the district develop their own competency based authentic assessment in social studies and writing and reporting? So it's not a question of whether or not it goes into local accountability. We're saying it's a requirement for social studies and writing to be part of the local accountability. The choice is how you test it. And then you're reporting it within your local accountability. So notice that is an expansion of your social studies and writing. And it would be a determination of the local districts to determine whether or not they're ready to create that authentic type of demonstration. Now, state assessments would continue to be, as they are, state mandated, or the district could develop authentic measures. And as we heard GRREC say, social studies was one of the pieces that has been the most vital in their development of their report to the learner.
And to add to that, if you think about what's going on in Hardin County with their work with local elected officials and talking about how things are passed and having those type of environment learning and how you assess that in your portrait of the learner would take the place of our 3 through 10 assessment. You decide. Do you want to use assessments that we would provide? So this is really different. We're going to talk about opt-in portions. So again, you can opt in if a district does not feel comfortable developing their own local accountability for social studies and writing. They can use the assessments that we provide. Let's face it, you are required to teach social studies standards at every grade and grades. How would you do that? How would you report that locally? So again, well, that choice measures part, those are things that we're saying needs to be a part of the local accountability model, but how that looks will be up to the local district.
So another option for vibrant learning experiences. The Kentucky United We Learn Council, the Accelerating Innovation Standing Committee, I got to be a part of facilitating that, has developed a menu of options around what vibrant learning experiences are. Now, we heard the student defenses from Hardin County. We also have capstone projects, work-based learning type of measures, or a district could develop their own and include that vibrant learning experiences in their local accountability system. Now, again, it's not an option of including vibrant learning experience because that's required for your local. The choice is how you do that, how you provide those vibrant learning experiences to your students.
And I'll add to that. I mean, the Kentucky United We Learn has concepts and others some ideas for vibrant learning, for example. And some things you look at vibrant learning two different ways in your local accountability model. Do you offer these and are your students taking part? For example, what percentage of your students are doing either defensive learning or they're doing passion projects or they're in internships or part of apprenticeships? Kind of like with transition readiness, we have that list of transition readiness that if you get one check marks that if you're reading the college benchmarks, then you are transition ready. So the same thing you can look at, and it's up to you. If you look at vibrant learning, this is the percentage of our students that are participating in this list. Not every single one, it could be just one, it could be just two. That's up to the local district to determine. But now, if you want to take that to another step, the district can go on and say, you know what, we're going to start off with what percentage of our students are a part of vibrant learning, but you know what, we want a quality measure. And we're leaving that at the district. So you can start out with participation. That's what the district's worried about, is how many of the students are participating in these. But it could morph into, again, that's a local district to what is the quality of those experiences that our students are inspiring. So again, vibrant learning would be a part of your local accountability model, but how you incorporate that as a district, as a community, is up to you.
And the final piece of the choice measure would be your interim assessments. And this is where we've gotten a lot of feedback on. In the current framework 2.0, it has that the state would develop interim assessments. We had surveys that said that 67+% of districts would give up their interim assessment in lieu of the state developing interim assessments. Now, since we've been in the town halls and we've met with superintendents across the state, we've heard that maybe they don't want to give those up as readily. So,
and think in terms of those being like math, I-rated stars. So when we're talking about interim assessments, we're talking about something to be state developed that in 2.0 would replace math, star, I-rated that's going on in districts now. Dr. Stanford was telling about input.
So those interim assessments would be particularly for reading and math, those two. Looking at fall administration and a winter administration for those two content areas. And those for our students and our parents, we get those reports back that says how our students are doing from that one assessment to the next. For our educators, they get information back instructionally that they can utilize in the classroom for instructional purposes. So those interim assessments are a vital piece of information around a whole balanced accountability system or assessment system. Now, what we've heard, again, and we're listening, we've heard that maybe people don't want to give those up as easily. So if we have a 3.0, and I think we will, that 3.0 could have that the interim assessments are opt-in, that the state would develop an interim assessment system that if the districts decided to opt into, that the state or the General Assembly would pay for it, and it would be aligned to the Kentucky Academic Standards and the spring summative assessment. Or if the district chose not to opt into it, then they could continue with their own local interim. That would be your MAP, your iRated, your STAR system. So 2.0 currently has that the state would develop them and replace. 3.0, I can imagine, and we want your feedback on that. It should be an opt-in.
And also, too, remember that when we talk about interim assessments, we're talking about the fall and the winter assessments. The summative assessment still has to be uniform because that's what we're using for the federal accountability piece. So the summative that's given at the end has to be uniform. There will not be any opt-in to summative. And it's part of the federal accountability piece. That will be uniform. And we've had people say, well, Dr. Fletcher, can we use, like, some districts use MAP, some districts use iRated. Can we just use that? No, in order to, part of the federal accountability piece, it has to be uniform. So the summative piece will be uniform. And our goal with the interim is to have those two interim assessments that align with our summative assessment. And one of the big discussions is what would that look like? We would want it to give you the same level of instructional data and information that you're getting with whatever interim assessments that you're using now. We put out an RFP and say, these are the requirements. And we want it to align with that summative assessment. But we also want to be able to say, if you gave this on September 15th, the window closes September 20th, September 21st, you got your data, you make instructional decisions based on that. Well, that's not what you're doing already with your interim assessments. So again, the interim assessments, the two interim assessments align with that summative assessment at the end. Districts can opt into our interim assessments, or if the districts are adding a huge investment in MAP, STAR, iRating, other assessments like that, we understand that, or they can keep those. But the summative is going to be, you think of it as the state test. Okay?
So then let's look at the last piece of the local measure. As you heard from Hardin County, from Brandy and Greg, they have their portrait of a learner, and they've developed that through committees that have come together and determined what those skills and knowledge and skills are and those dispositions. So looking at local accountability and pulling those pieces out and identifying how the community and the district wants to prioritize and having that flexibility to be able to do that in that customization. The local accountability, again, has the engagement and that discussion around that and developing those pieces. Now, we realize that districts are in different places. Hardin County, you saw their timeline. It started with the explore and celebrate, and it goes all the way to 2029, I believe, that had the last date. Another district may not even have started the conversation about local accountability and portraits of a learner. So we need to meet districts where they are, meet our educators where they are, our leaders, and even our students where they are, so that we'll develop this pilot phase. And now what we're looking at is legislations for consideration in the 2026 legislative session. So this time, next year, we'll be talking or continuing the talks. We're just not starting then, but we've got conversations going. But for consideration in the 2026, looking at piloting that, learning from those local labs of learning and districts like Hardin County who have engaged in this so that we learn from each other and not have obstacles that we could face, but we could get past them from the learnings of other districts. So do a pilot phase and then expand that to districts and then eventually sustain it statewide. So we're looking at many years of implementation of this. So before I hand it over to the commissioner, just one more thing. And again, we invite you because you are interested in education and you want to see what's best for your loved one and the students in your community. So who better to help support that? Because when we have support from districts, and we've seen this across the state already, when we have the support of our communities, students benefit, educators benefit, schools, districts, and the community benefit from everyone working together.
First, let's get everybody. If we talk about our journey, there's been thousands of people that have started working in this increase. When I talk about what's happening in the classroom, if we just go back to how many people contribute to this hard time, I would bet there's hundreds. How many?
Over 100 community members attended our Portrait of a Learner kickoff.
And so you've got over 100 community members, but how many teachers are also exploring and challenging? And this is something that's kind of a grassroots buildup. This is not something that was a complete new idea by the Kentucky Department of Education. These are things that are building up within our districts. And how do we celebrate that? How do we move forward? And if you look at the Kentucky, how many Kentucky United We Learn Council members do we have in here? You raise your hand, please, if you're a member of the Kentucky United We Learn. Thank you so much for that. This work began, I'm gonna go back to as early as 2021. We had the Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education. And we started having those empathy interviews where we were talking to people within our district. And as a member of the old Kentucky Coalition for Advancing Education, we started off with asking our community members, tell us a story. We didn't mention accountability. We didn't try to steer them. But you know, a lot of the things that we were hearing from our community members is, you know, test scores, we feel like they're important, but not the best thing about our kids. That's what our community members are telling us. And so listening to them, then all of a sudden we get into the Portrait of the Learner work, and then we start developing competencies with the Kentucky UK Next Gen. And what does it look like for a student to be a communicator in the 8th grade versus the 4th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade? How does that look and how do they grow? So if you again think about this, our hopes is to have we will have a federal accountability system because that's required. And that's what we're going to use to identify CSI, TSI, ATSI schools because we want to help them. We don't want that to be a scarlet letter. They need support. I was a principal at a PLA middle school. I was hired to turn it around, and I was also at a high school, and then a district. So I'm a reform tester. I am not proud of this, folks, but a lot of the work that I did early on in my career in 2004, I took kids out of their art class. Took kids, if it wasn't a social studies accountability year, I took them part-time out of the social studies class to get them into that intervention for math and reading because we had to meet a test score. I was good at it. We turned schools around. I say I put a team together that encouraged us. Don't get me wrong. It was good, hard work. I don't want to invalidate that. It was good, hard work, but the method that we went through it was we were so focused on math and reading, we were sucking the joy out of our kids. We really were. But you know what? The kids were performing for us because they loved us and they wanted to make sure that we kept our jobs. The very first teaching job I had, the second teaching job I had, I went into this high school and they said, do you want to teach AP calculus? I said, absolutely. Good. It's about ready to go under. We only have 9 kids in AP calculus. You're going to have to go to There's accountability there. You're gonna have this sort of score. We're gonna give you. Okay. Oh, by the way, you want to teach algebra too? Well, heck yeah. I want to teach algebra too. I'm a new math teacher. I've only been teaching for 3 years. I'm going to a new district. Good. It's the accountability year. Nobody else wants to teach it. Wow. Now, change that to when I became a superintendent. We met all our goals for the very first time. We had banners up and down Bulldog Lane. There was such a great effort from first of all, we had help from the State Department on how to do that. There's a lot of work. So I have a fond memory of working with KDE and that process. It was hard. There was a lot of turnaround work that we did. And then about the second day of our celebration, with all the banners up and down Bulldog Lane, I had someone say, but Dr. Fletcher, are we relevant? I wanted to fire the person because we gutted ourselves. But we were doing things like pulling kids out of some classes. Maybe not in, they should have been in a career technical pathway and moving into that. So if you look at that, the Kentucky and we learned as we got into this position, that group really wanted to focus on vibrant learning. And it became an accountability focus. And then taking all the input from hundreds across the state. So for those of you in the audience or maybe even watching and see this, if you're part of the Kentucky Ivy Learning Council, thank you so much. I suppose you'd raise your hand and thank you for all the work that you do. Do we have legislators? We had 2 earlier. I mentioned them a little bit earlier. All our legislators. I do want to thank Representative Jackson, who was here earlier again, and also Representative Scott Lewis. They were here earlier in the meeting. So thank you to those folks. So that being said, the last piece that I'll put in there is one of the parts of the accountability model is having an external evaluator come in every 3 years into a district. And we talked about accreditation, what were accreditation styles, some of that language we were using early on. Our goal with that third-party evaluator is to come in and identify exemplars across our state. So if you have a district that has an exemplar process for defenses of learning, we need to identify that so other districts can use that as a model. Again, notice we're trying to lift each other up. So even when we have an external model, look at the local accountability piece. It's all about identifying exemplars so that can be well. Again, we would expect that group to have recommendations for the district, but also too identifying if there's a group that has an exemplar process on collaborating with their community, or maybe their portrait learner process is an exemplar. Maybe they have an excellent performance-based system for assessing social studies. Let's put that as an exemplar so other people can learn from. So again, as you can see, I did not mention red, blue, orange, yellow, green. It's more about collaborating with each other. So that being said, we do have some time for questions. Oh, no, we'll go back one. Let's go back. Now, I think this is the most important part. Go back and think about the student, the child that you had a picture of. We don't know what tomorrow is going to look like sometimes, especially with the integration of AI and what that looks like in the classroom. But we want to build enduring skills within kids. If a student is going to be a collaborator, if we can incorporate that collaboration, if we can make sure that student is a communicator, that's going to do them good throughout their life. If they're an active learner, an engaged citizen, how do we make sure that student has those type of enduring skills that are going to move on throughout their lives? And that's what we're hoping to do. Right. Is that the kind of experience you want for that child? You know, I bring up the picture of my now 18-year-old when he was little. I'm like, man, I hope as a principal and as a superintendent, I gave him some of that. As a teacher, I gave him some of that. I would be excited for him to start over. Because I'd like to see him as a baby, I guess. But also, too, for him to have that experience. Wouldn't you like to see the same for the pictures you have? So, how can I stay engaged? There is a QR code, and there was some things as far as talking with people. There's several QR codes that were throughout this. Like early on, we had a QR code up that was talking about different districts that have local accountability models that you could look at. I think Shelby County, Greene County, Hardin County. One of the things we've talked about Shelby County, and I'll point to James Nyhoff as superintendent. One of the things, even as a former superintendent, I kept the Shelby County Portrait of the Learner all their work a folder on my desk. because it was such great work. And that's what I wanted my students to have in Lawrence County on the other end of the state, border of West Virginia. That's what I wanted my students. But even now, you have Shelby County just now getting into local accountability. They have a website where they're giving graphs and data for their community members, but they're also having people to tell stories. That's a different look at local accountability. Have people to actually have data to tell your story, but also have people in videos tell your story about how this changed their perception of their district, changed the experience of their student. But also, too, we want you to stay engaged. So this is how you can do that. So I'll stop there. Just for a second, let's say for a couple minutes, what wows or wonders do you have? So when I say wow, I mean, this is something that as we move forward, this is great. We have to have this in. This has to be a part of it. Or you know what? We're not so sure about this part. So at your tables for, let's say, 4 minutes, have those wows and wonders for just a second. But 4, 3, 2, 1. And I need to back up. Sorry. All right. Now, this is your opportunity to discuss your wows or wonders or questions that you may have. So, wows and wonders. Would anyone like to start by sharing wows and or wonders?
I wonder what will ensure that advanced learners have opportunities to prepare for what their future could and should be.
That's a great question. One of the things we've talked about with, for example, with a district, and let's say that a district wants to part of their local accountability, say we want advanced coursework to be a reflection in our local accountability. But that's really from that local community to come in and say, you know what, we want to make sure that our students are taking AP courses. We want to make sure that our students are taking dual credit. What percentage of our kids are taking those type of classes? So again, encouraging districts, as what's based on the input from their community, to have as it relates to advanced coursework. Now, I will say this, even with transition readiness, there are still parts in the transition readiness piece that if a student takes a dual credit course or gets a certain score on AP exam, there's parts that's in that they get a checkbox for transition readiness that's built into the federal piece. But let's say a district wants to take it to another level and really talk about, okay, our goal is to have 25% of our students taking AP level courses, and our goal is to have them average a 3 or better. It's up to the local district. Then having those community members have that input. And I think, we've even had some districts on the flip side to talk about what percentage of our teachers are certified to teach dual credit. What percentage of our teachers have those credentials to teach advanced level coursework, and how do we increase that? So again, really depending on what's important in the local model and allowing that flexibility for districts to do that. So from our end, there are pieces of the transition readiness part that has, if a student scores, I think they have to have a C on one dual credit class, and they're considered to be transition ready. Don't quote me on that, but it deals with dual credit. And I think there's even parts with the AP courses that get a certain score that can be transition ready. But a district can take it to a whole nother level. And folks, if you're thinking that, I hope you see there's such an importance on reading and mathematics here, because there's been such an investment from our legislators in numeracy and literacy. And we owe it to our kids and to those legislators to have return on investment. But also, too, we also want to make sure that whatever the local district focuses in on is something that they're reporting back to their local. So you may have some districts that really push towards that, and that's up to them. Yes.
Commissioner Chuck Thornberry from Blackstone. I'd like to thank you first on behalf of the different communities that are here for making the trip down here, Dr. Stanford, as well to you. I'd like to dovetail a little work on what Dr. Roberts pointed out. Who would have thought 2 years ago that the lowly English student would be making millions of dollars as prompt engineers? It is the preeminent job now. I mean, I laugh at the thought that 30 years or 50 years from now, you could think we really don't understand. We're talking about AGI and possibly at the end of this year, they're going to the White House Friday to talk about that. The largest infrastructure in AI in history is being made this week. By 2029, maybe we have ASI. My wonder is this. I understand and I appreciate that when you understand a topic, you have to distill that down to write it. I understand the necessity of that. I have concerns about making social studies the preeminent thing in Kentucky. We're talking about a science-based economy. We have people that the largest companies in the world are science technology based. If we want those companies to come here, I would hope that the commissioner might use his position to leverage a dialogue between this side in the legislature and say, can we take a look at this? Is this the right thing for the Commonwealth? I wish that you would use your position to look at our elementary physical education. I don't know about global warming, but I think that science is settled with regard to activity and learning. I think aside from Maslow's hierarchy of do you have a food and do you have enough shelter and you have enough sleep, the next thing is really education. It's not more book time for these elementary children. I think we have the second most obese children in the country. And I think that I would hope that you would use your position to say, in this part of their education, we need to show children that education is an important part of their livelihood and adulthood. Those are things that I would hope that you all might use your position, now that you've attained it, to say, can we bring the secretary, can we bring the governor, can we bring the legislature to say, we need a care too. We need to take a look at where is the Commonwealth going to be with 4.6 million people in 10 years. You know, your jobs are temporary. Somebody will have those jobs. Our jobs are temporary. Beyond us, where our children going to be in 10 or 20 years? And those are the things that I'm concerned about when I see. I love the roadmap. I love this Fincher Smith peak thing. I'm all about it. But I do have concerns about some of the underpinning strategies of driving us towards social studies. I love social studies. Don't get me wrong. And there's a great place for it. But is that the place you want to drive your bus in a time when we have technology boom?
And that's again, I keep relying back on local accountability. As a matter of fact, we had a discussion today. Was what does an AI pathway look like in a career technical field? And we started some conversations, and I think Warren County, as a matter of fact, was one of the districts that's talking about what does an AI pathway look like. So our goal is to help districts develop those type of pathways, but also too, in hopes of if there's those, if we look at our science assessment, yes, we have to give a test. Yes, it has to be uniform. But also, too, if there's some competency-based measures and a performance-based system that a district can come up with that they feel like this is what a science assessment looks like, or how the experience that we want to give our students as it relates to science, then also, too, market that as an exemplar across the state and make it grow. So instead of having, I agree, like, for example, districts that may want to look at physical activity for students as part of their local accountability model. Maybe it's about how much physical activity they have in each one. That's why it's so important to be involved in those local accountability model discussions. You know, the words that we're hearing, what we're hearing from a lot of people across the state is streamline that federal. And that's what we've done. We've streamlined the federal, but leaving a lot of others to be kind of grown within local districts and then try to expand that throughout. So there's going to be things that are going to be developed in Hardin County, Warren County, that we want to see spread throughout the state. I don't know what that looks like right now, but there are some examples of portraits of a learner that's out there. So to answer your question, what we want to do is be able to identify those exemplars that are pushing forth that science curriculum, maybe advanced coursework, maybe, and when I say maybe, what is important to that local community, then use that as an exemplar to get people across the state those same type of ideas. So we would be more than happy to work with districts and collaborate on what does a science assessment system look like, and then expand it from there. So again, we're banking a lot on our local districts and coming up with these with our support, but also support from other outside entities, national organizations that can come in and help us develop maybe competency-based assessments or performance-based assessments, project-based learning, because really, if you're going to look for that type of system when it comes to science, project-based learning is probably the way we got to go. So how in the world do we come up with project-based learning assessments or project-based learning experiences that students have that prepares them for what's next. And the other thing too is I want you to notice a local accountability system is a lot more nimble than what a state accountability system is. So if you implement something like in this piece in your local accountability model, then all of a sudden something comes on the horizon, you can change it yourself and be ready for the next year. That's part of your local accountability. So we provide some nimbleness to districts to adapt whatever's coming. So going back to that is being a part of that local accountability system to bring that out in our local districts, and how do we support that? Others.
So if we decide what we want at the K through 12 level, the only way to get that is to prepare our teachers. So our teacher education system really needs to be revamped, especially if we go project-based learning. And right now with our shortage in all our option 6, we need to be looking there almost before we're looking at the lower level. So which is kind of cart before the horse?
Well, there's a lot of partnerships. For example, the Commonwealth Continuing Education Continuum with, I'm a chair of that, also the Lieutenant Governor, but also the President of CDE. And how are we working together to how does that educator preparation experience look a little different? These are the things that are on the horizon. For example, if you look at our secondary schools, they have developed their own portrait. I think it's called graduate profile. I think it's what they call it. But they're doing similar type of work that they're requiring their graduates to have when they finish. So these are the competencies we expect. When I say we, I'm talking about CPE, the Council of Post-Secondary Education. This is what they expect. So in order to do those type of competencies and see that portrait of graduate or graduate profile, I think is what they call it, there's going to have to be changes in the experience they're having within their system. So there's a partnership there that's getting that work out. So I agree there needs to be some changes. But again, in that partnership is where those changes need to happen. And I don't think you'll find another state where the work on a profile of the learner and the graduate profile is so aligned in the work that we're doing right now. So I'd like to, I hate to brag on Dr. Thompson because his head was filled. But Dr. Aaron Thompson, if you guys know Dr. Aaron Thompson, please tell him I brag on him if you don't care. But the work that he's leading on that secondary level with the graduate profile is aligning with this. So we're really working to making sure we're preparing teachers in that way. I mean, it takes some time. But again, as you saw, even this accountability model, that onboarding is looking at years ahead. So I don't have the answer right now, but the alignment is happening. And that means we're going to have to change our education preparation. I even say that we're going to change a lot about how we prepare our principals. Because how much of our time, as a former principal, was there about collaboration with the community? Was there about accountability? There's a lot of state law and things that are requirements, but how do we change those prep programs to prepare them for this type of setting? I agree, and that's that type of work being done.
So we talked about, we mentioned earlier about our students who learning and academy that's local academy. And a lot of this is focusing on the needs of our local community. How is that making room for our students to be prepared to be on the global level? Prioritizing just local.
I think that goes back to look at, for example, Hardin County. In order for those employers to be able to compete on a national local level, we're going to have to prepare those students to be ready to work in that industry. So the alignment with your local businesses, they're on a not a national level, but a global level too. So in those partnerships that we're having with, and I say we're talking about our local districts, okay? Our local districts are having those type of partnerships to help students better prepared to be in that workforce, which is on a global scale. So when we talk about local accountability, it's what's available in that local community that prepares them on that global scale. Hardin County, I think, would be an excellent example of that. Warren County, if you look at what's going on in Warren County, if you look at what's going on in Bowling Green Independent, if you look at all of our districts across, what are we doing to get our students ready for that global market? I really truly believe that it comes to those partnerships locally to prepare for those businesses that are preparing globally. Again, we are relying on the local model and trying to grow that as we go forward. Again, from that, well, let's just stop for a second. What in our current accountability system does that? Nothing. I mean, other than you're taking your science tests, your social studies tests, your math, your reading, there's nothing in our current accountability system that really has a lot of room for that preparing for the future. We're about assessing where kids are, whereas local accountability, on the other hand, is more about preparing for the future. So to me, this is a good step forward. Others? Yes.
I guess I'm wondering how things that about local accountability will not result in the same inequities that Karen put aside 35 years ago.
Again, some of the things we talk about local accountability is being able to report that in student groups, is making sure that we are addressing all our different student groups and their needs. So that would be a part of that system. I think that in working with our local groups, they are better equipped to address those needs than maybe we are with the uniform system across the state. Now, that being said, how we work together for that. When you look at the work and making sure we have those, addressing those inequities, part of that is the collaboration among districts. If you're working with another district that is very similar to you, and these are how they're addressing those inequities, and that's something we can learn from each other. Again, really relying on that collaboration. So identifying those inequities, addressing those inequities, and trying to do that together.
Commissioner, I would add too that our local educators working together in alongside in networks in our local communities or our education co-ops and guidance from the department to develop some exemplar standards of what excellence looks like. I think that would help people understand what those look like and provide examples so that what it looks like can be high level across.
Again, really relying on districts working together to address those. And then too, smart point. That's going to be one of the things that external evaluator comes in, or the external identifier, or how you want to look at that external group to come in, is making sure that we're addressing inequities that maybe we're missing. So when you have that third party that comes in, that there will be an RFP, we look at a group that will come in, and one of the specific questions we would ask them is, what inequities are you seeing we need to address? And again, trying to avoid that at all costs if we can. Others? Yes.
At our table, we just had some good discussion going on, and some things that I heard that I thought I might want to express, especially as a member of the school council. And I tried to answer some questions, but I'm not certain that I answered them fully, so I just wanted to share. So one of the things that was addressed is, how often would a district be able to opt in or out of certain things, such as, I guess you all were claiming the double assessments, which sort of, as an educator, I call those the universal screeners. And then like the social studies and writing, whether or not, how often could a district say, okay, this year we want to have the state given test, and then maybe next year we want to try to do it on our own. Like how often can a district change, or is that something that has yet to be developed and decided upon? And then who would design those assessments at the state level that are not already mapped to those things that a lot of districts are already using? I assume that we would, have the state would have a company design those, and then it would be based on the state standards. And then is that going to be more referenced? And I'm thinking maybe with how are we going to compare ourselves to other students across the nation as well? So those are just two things that were assessed.
Let me get started. Okay. One of the things, there's a lot of different types of questions, types of assessments that we're talking about opting. One of the big discussions with interim assessments as it relates to our summative assessment is having a core piece of those interim assessments to have to evaluate our state standards, because that's required. But have that would be wrapped around a more adaptive model that would give us a better indication of where students are when it comes to, and we're just talking about math and reading, okay? That gives us some better instructional data with students, similar to what we see with iReady or with math. So again, making sure we're assessing the core, the state standards, but also having that flexibility around it too. The other thing too that we've talked about, and I'm pushing very diligently on this, is whatever we have with math and reading, I want it to include grade level equipment. Because we can tell people what proficiency, this is the percentage of students proficient. And how many people in the grocery store don't know what that is? But if you were to go in and say, hey, your student is in third grade, they're on a fourth grade reading level, people understand that. So in order to have those type of things, we need a better assessment system. So again, having that core piece of the interim assessments, and again, what would happen is we put out an RFP, request for proposal, and we would say, these are the things that we want to require in our interim and summative assessments. And then have companies bid on, whether it be Curriculum Associates or part of our reading, or it be NWEA, which is math, maybe it's Pearson, or maybe it's there's just allow them to bid on that based on these are the requirements that we want to do against the best system. But also too, making sure we're still getting that instructional data that we're used to in our interim assessments that we're using right now. Now, when you come to social studies, Dr. Shepard, when we talk about social studies assessment, we talk a little bit about that. And again, remember, we're talking about opt-in social studies assessment, opt-in writing versus district development.
So yeah, I think that you asked also who would be developing those assessments. Well, who better to develop Kentucky assessments than Kentucky educators? And so the experts in those content areas then would be utilized, much like we bring educators in now to develop the Kentucky summative assessment. So looking toward our educators, our experts on our standards to develop Kentucky assessments so that it is aligned to the Kentucky academic standards and to the summative assessment.
So you're looking at with social studies and science and also with writing, pulling in educators. Now we'd also have to pull in educators to develop that core part, I would assume. And so we're working on trying to develop what exactly that looks like. For example, Alaska is a state that's looking at having that system for reading and math that has their state standards at the heart wrapped around an adaptive piece. Like, okay, you answered this question correctly, then you get a more difficult question. If you've answered incorrectly, then it kind of pinpoints where that student is. So we'd have to highly rely on that outside, or whether it be whichever company, to develop that type of system.
Did that answer all your questions?
Was there something else that maybe we missed?
How often would a district be able to decide whether they were going to
That was one we haven't really talked about, but from the budgeting process, more than likely we'd have to look at maybe a 2-year process. Okay, we're going to opt in for 2 years. And maybe districts will say, okay, to start out, we don't want to opt in. We're going to see how it's working with other districts that do opt in. Then after 2 years, because there's a 2-year budgeting process, when we come from SEEK and all that from the state legislature, I would like to say 2 years, but again, that's not been developed. That's something to say.
Wondered how much. And then the norm reference portion, is that something that will be shown? Like, I guess that's something that teachers are used to seeing on there.
That'd be something we'd have to ask the company as part of our RFP. Good question. I'll give you one that came from superintendents and from GRREC just earlier today. We had thought about, instead of looking at math and looking at our math and reading 3 through 10 or 3 through 8, and also the 10th grade. Can we also go back and say we want this the system to be K1 and 2 because we already use some? Can we come up with a system that goes off? It won't be a part of accountability, we talk about accountability. It would be an assessment that we would offer that districts could take, kindergarten, first, second, to be interim assessments for the instructional purposes. But when you get to third grade, then you're looking at some. So that was a question that came up with superintendents today that we hadn't really thought about. Instead of just looking at the accountability years, what about an assessment system that has K1 and 2 data also too from the state level? Again, that would not be a part of accountability, but that could be data that a district could use very similar to what they're doing with, we have some districts that use early start, kindergarten, things of that early, and there's other programs too. So again, that's why we're having these, is have these type of questions, because we're writing all these down, we're recording, see how we can address those. Other wows or comments or wonders?
I am a special educator, and so going back to what Dr. Roberts said about GT students, we have GT students, we have special education students, we have EL students, we have them all. So when we talk about what it all truly mean in this process, and then with the accountability part, is the accountability office having those conversations with the different offices within KDE about students with disabilities, about students at GT services or EL population? Is that group, all those groups working together to help with this accountability process?
Well, we have members of our school council that represent all student populations. So, when you look at in the federal piece, we still have making sure that we're assessing our special education or gifted and talented when it comes to reading, mathematics, and also looking at the survey, and also growth, and also our ELL population. But going back to with that local piece is, what does that look like for special education and making sure we're meeting their needs too? So some of those assurances we would look at is making sure that we're meeting the needs of our gifted learner, our special education learner, and those of nature too. Because even if for those districts that are in the room that had, and you don't have to answer yes or no, but if you've really been working with this local accountability model and the changes that you see in your special education population and how they're demonstrating learning, I've heard stories of just pure excitement. So again, really relying on local. Now from the federal piece, absolutely. We still have the same type of reporting, the same type of things that we have right now, but also in that local accountability model, making sure that we try to keep from those inequities happening with these student population groups. So going back to that local accountability model. Got about 4 minutes. Other questions? Wows? Hey, look, we even like your wow. You do that too. Wow, the commissioner talks a lot. No, let me very, very serious. Thank you so much for the input. That's what we're here for, to hear those kind of questions. Because honestly, until it was brought up this morning, I wouldn't have thought about, when we look at kindergarten, first, and second grade too. That's why we're here, to hear those ideas. So thank you for that, and all the things we have input. So no matter what, we were listening and we've made changes, and then after we come up with 3.0, what does that look like moving forward? But also too, we may not have it spelled out in a framework. There's going to have to be some guardrails and frameworks that are put in place. So the district say, these are making sure that you're doing this. You have to check this box, make sure those type of requirements are. So we have a further question.
Thank you. I have a question regarding, I guess, our strongest learners. I don't want to say motivating learners, because sometimes our strongest learners, there's used to getting good grades. So my question is, how do we connect high school curriculum, such as project-based curriculum, with preparation for college? I'm a science teacher, so I've already seen a lot of participation-based projects, and students just are not ready for the rigor of knowledge-based, content-based college anymore.
When we look at it, and still trying to address the issue of encouraging students to take those advanced level courses. Now, I would argue that if you have a really well project-based learning, there's going to be different levels that students can demonstrate. So maybe there's some parts in there where a gifted student can take this to another level, or a motivated student can take it to another level. Because I hate to say gifted, because I'll use my own son as an example. My son was a welder, and he came home one day. He said, "Dad, I don't want to go to college." I said, "Okay, great." He said, "Well, you're a superintendent and a doctor. We mean it's true." I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a welder. I said, you'll make more money than you already want if you want to travel. So he talked about being a welder and we supported him. So what happened was he became one of the, in my opinion, unbiased, one of the best welders you could find. He actually worked with roads. He got signs in 30 different states, 2 in Europe. But the college asked him to come back and help teach other students how to do Texas TIG, which is a term I never knew until I asked someone who's a welder, and how to do different types of welding techniques. He changed. He went from, I got to go through. As a matter of fact, when he came back from taking the ACT, he said, Dad, I tried that time. I'm sorry, what, son? He said, it's your job. I'm on the line, so I tried that time. To all the other times when we were sending him to take the ACT, that he became so motivated that he was given these vibrant learning experiences will have more motivated students. So when you have those motivated learners, then how can we challenge them on that upper level content? I taught AP calculus. I'd love for every student to take AP calculus. But how in the world can we challenge students to project-based learning and looking at AP calculus? Maybe it's connecting them to an engineering firm. Maybe it's connecting them to some other areas so that they have those experiences with our leaders in industry so that advanced coursework is relevant. All right. We are at time.
I've got a wow. Is that okay?
Please.
Stay up here with me. I think 29th year in public education in Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
My 31st year in public education in Kentucky. So just about the same amount of time. I'm a member of the GRREC team here. And my wow is that we've watched a lot of accountability systems come and go in Kentucky, right? Like we did, you mentioned CARE earlier, and there was so much excitement. Came in around that time and all the opportunities. But in the last 10 years, we've probably seen 3 or 4. Like we kind of started forgetting the names of them. It was CATS, and then it's like another one. And I was a parent during that time and had 3 students go through the system. And I was like, just tell me whether my student is ready for life or not. And so the wow for me is that we've got a commissioner who has walked where we've walked as a math teacher in Kentucky, and then as an administrator in Kentucky, and then as a superintendent in Kentucky, and now as our commissioner. So I feel so positively encouraged that we can really get it right this time. And at some point, sometimes in your career, when you get later in your career, you can become cynical. I said I wasn't going to, but there's been times in the last few years where I wonder, but I really feel a fresh spirit of encouragement and the fact that he knows what we need and we're going to get there. People on the Cool Council are helping get there. He's listening. He'll keep listening. He's one of us and he won't forget where he came from. We want those students to be able to express their learning with vibrant learning experiences. We know that at the federal level, we've still got to test and we've still got to meet those standards that the feds need. And we're still going to have, unfortunately, CSI and TSI and those kind of things. But the chance finally to just celebrate all the magnificent things that are going on locally, whether it be a student getting a welding certificate and knowing that they're going to go on and be super successful in life or otherwise. So I'm wild that I can still get that excited about it at this point in my career. And I thank you all and KDE and the Cool Council and everybody that was here tonight for your participation.
And to add to that, every single time I walk into one of your classrooms, every single time I walk into one of our districts, it is a rebirth for me. It is the opportunity to see the excitement. Every time I walk into 300 Sower building, we have a staff and all across our leadership, all the way through that are all in for providing these type of experiences for our students. We have, every time I have a leadership meeting every 2 weeks, I walk out of that just thoroughly impressed with the team we have. When we work with the Kentucky United We Learn Council, I am so proud of people because there hasn't been other than the question this morning, for the most part, Kentucky United We Learn has prepared us to get to this point because of the work that's been done in districts. So this work began in 2021. Robbie Fletcher had no clue he wanted to be the commissioner. As a matter of fact, I would have probably told you were crazy. But there's so much work that's going on as it's gone through, like in Hardin County. I don't think there's any way you ever want to go back. And to have that every single day when you walk into a job and it's no longer a job anymore. This is not my job. This is my passion. because I have so many people around me that are passionate about this too. I don't want to let them down. And most importantly, we don't want to let down our students. We owe it to them to give them the absolute best. And I think this is our opportunity within our legislatures and within our state to get it right. I have to lean on you for advocacy, input, and help. And you're more than willing by being here tonight. So we appreciate that. So that being said, I hope that you walk out of here with maybe some more questions, but also too, you know what? We have tremendous potential. Let's move forward with it. Thank you.